Welcome to Revenge Report. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let's dive in. He looked exactly the same in that casket. Like he could sit up, clear his throat, and tell the funeral director they folded his collar wrong. My boots hit the gravel outside Harlow and Son's funeral home like gunshots. The first time I'd been back in Five Pines, Oregon in 5 years, and of course it had to be for this. I wore my old Forest Service Ranger uniform, not out of pride, out of respect, or maybe just armor. Didn't matter. The second I stepped through the chapel doors, the tension nearly knocked the wind out of me. My God, came that voice I'd hated since puberty, if it isn't the wilderness dropout. Marcus. Before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? He looked polished. Crisp navy suit, tan from golfing. That fake-ass smile that worked on the town council but never on me. His handshake came in like a dare. I didn't take it. You came all this way just to prove you still hate it here? He asked, eyes flicking down to my boots. Could have sent a postcard? I came to bury my father, I said flatly, not to listen to a real estate pitch. He laughed just once. Still got that chip on your shoulder. Guess the forest didn't knock it off. I didn't answer. He knew better than to get close. And I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of asking why the hell he was acting like the host of his own father's funeral. The chapel was half full, mostly old locals. I spotted Mom up front, stiff, unreadable, like always. Then I noticed them. 3 men in the back. Suits, buzz cuts, no flowers, no tears. One nodded almost imperceptibly when Marcus walked in. Another kept scanning the crowd like it was a briefing room. I leaned toward Evan. Do you see them? He didn't follow. Who? Back row. 3 suits. Don't belong here. He looked again, slower this time. Yeah, they're not from around here. I've seen that stance before, I whispered. Not mourners. Observers, he gave me a look. Federal. I nodded once, then turned back toward the side door. Come on. Not here outside, I sucked in the mountain air like a cigarette. The moment the door clicked behind us, I spoke. He's not just dead, Evan. He was silenced. You don't know that. I do. I pointed toward the parking lot, toward Marcus's Lexus parked across 2 spots like he owned the damn place. Marcus is in the middle of something. Those men weren't here for Franklin. They're watching him. They're watching this. Evan rubbed his jaw, staring at the building. You think your brother sold out his own father? I didn't answer. I just started walking toward our car. I needed to get to the house. I threw open the passenger door, slid in, and slammed it shut. Evan followed a second later. He didn't ask where we were going. The engine hadn't even turned over before my mind pulled me straight back. 3 months ago, middle of the night, pitch black outside our apartment window in Bend. I'd woken up to the burner phone I kept in a drawer next to old forest maps and a compass I hadn't used in years. Only 3 people had that number. 2 were dead. 1 was my father. I answered on instinct. Daria, he said, voice low but clear. Do not interrupt. Just listen. Something in his tone made me sit up straight. Marcus is involved in something. He's not working alone. I didn't breathe. I just let him talk. There's a cleanup program, used to be called Echo Ridge, shut down in the late 80s. It's not shut down anymore. They reactivated it, but not through the feds. Someone else has the files. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. What kind of program? I asked, even though I knew the name. Every ranger out here did. Environmental containment, he said. Hazardous waste. Water table red zones. Places that should never be developed. I kicked the covers off, grabbed a pen from the nightstand. Marcus is involved? He used me to get access, Daria. His voice cracked for the first time. He got my signature on a transfer request last year, told me it was for conservation easements. I didn't double-check. Jesus, Dad. I said don't interrupt. He paused, maybe to check if he was being listened to. The wetlands east of Cooper's Bluff, the old preservation sites. They were sold. Under fake names, fake shell groups claiming conservation status. They're draining them. I was already pulling up the maps in my head. Why now? I don't know. But I know this. They met in town hall 2 nights ago. After hours, no minutes, no logs. I was there by accident. Thought I left my glasses. I heard them talking through the floorboards. Who's them? Marcus, and 2 others I didn't recognize. One of them mentioned Echo Ridge. Like it was active, and they're using council signatures to backdate zoning files. He took a breath. It came out shaky. I've been followed since. I gripped the phone tighter. Then go to the state board. Report it. I can't, he said. They've buried it too deep. I don't know who to trust locally, and I don't want your mother involved. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding like I was back on fire patrol. Dad, let me come down. No, he said sharply. No, don't come home unless you have to. It's not safe. What am I supposed to do? Just sit on this? He hesitated. You listen, you watch. And if you do come back, remember this. If they bring up the trout hatchery, they've read the wrong files. I blinked. The what? That's the code. You'll know when you hear it. Then the line went dead. I called back 6 times that night, straight to voicemail. I tried again the next morning. Still nothing. A week later, I got the call from Mom. Franklin Hanley, 71, heart failure in his workshop. Died slumped over a drafting table, she said. Looked peaceful. No autopsy. Cremated 2 days later. Too clean. No one just dies in the middle of fighting a scam this big. Not without help. That was the night I took my uniform out of storage, laid it out on the couch like armor. I didn't tell Evan anything until the drive down. Why didn't you say something? He asked me back then. Because, I said, gripping the wheel, I'm not walking into Five Pines blind. I'm walking and ready now, sitting in the car outside the funeral home. I stared down at my hands. They were shaking. Evan reached over and put a hand over mine. What's the plan? He asked. I pulled out my phone and opened the memo app. We make a list, I said, of every name, every location, every damn trout reference we hear. And then we burn this thing down. We parked in front of the old house just after sundown. Porch light was on, but the rest of the place looked abandoned. Paint peeling, flower beds dead, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, just hollow. Mom opened the door before we knocked. She didn't smile, didn't hug me, just stepped aside like I was the plumber. You came, she said flatly, glancing at my uniform. Didn't think you'd wear that. I brushed past her. I'm not here for pleasantries. Evan followed, carrying both our bags. She barely acknowledged him. Marcus isn't here? I asked. She shook her head. He's handling things with the lawyer. He's been busy. Doing what? I said, staring hard. She ignored the question and walked to the kitchen. I set the guest room up for you two. Don't make a mess. That cold edge, it used to hit like ice when I was younger. Now, it just made me tired. I turned toward the back window. The barn was still there, half swallowed in blackberry vines and shadows. The roof sagged worse than I remembered. The padlock on the door was gone. You went through Dad's records? I asked. She stiffened. Don't go out there. I asked you a question. Her jaw tightened. There's nothing useful in the barn, just old maps and tools. Marcus is dealing with it. I stared at her for a beat. He doesn't get to touch Dad's legacy. He's family, she snapped, finally looking at me. I didn't flinch. So am I. That was the end of it. She turned her back and pretended the conversation never happened. Just like always. That night, I waited until she went to bed. Then I pulled on my boots and slipped out the back door with a flashlight and gloves. The barn smelled like mildew and sawdust. Nothing had been cleaned. Cobwebs stretched across the rafters like spider highways. I stepped over a rusted rake and made a straight line to the corner where Dad kept his filing cabinet. Bottom drawer, the one labeled Environmental Permits and Zone Maps, was pried open. The lock was snapped clean. Papers were tossed around like someone had been in a rush. I pulled out a handful of manila folders. Half the maps were missing grid markings, pages ripped out of reports, printouts with redacted dates. Whoever got here first knew exactly what they were looking for. I scanned the shelves. Then I noticed something off. A seed box under the workbench, covered in dirt and labeled alfalfa. But it was way too heavy to be seed. I dragged it out, flipped the latches, and cracked it open. Inside were photocopies, neatly stacked, watermarked. Echo Ridge, 1988, revised. There had to be 24 files. No originals, no signatures, no metadata. Damn it. They'd cleaned him out. Still, I kept flipping. Project summaries, land boundaries, site surveys. Some pages were stuck together, like they'd been printed fast, stacked while still hot. This wasn't a casual break-in. It was deliberate, coordinated. I ran my hand along the bottom of the lid and froze. There was something taped underneath. I peeled it off, a small plastic evidence bag with a soil sample. labeled in Franklin's handwriting. Next to it, a brass key tagged Council Archives, Cabinet B. I held both up to the light, so they didn't get everything. Behind me, a board creaked. I spun around fast, flashlight beam slicing through dust and shadows. Nothing, just wind hitting the barn walls. I slid the soil sample and key into my coat pocket and closed the box. Back in the house, I walked straight past Evan and dropped the items on the nightstand. He sat up fast. "Someone beat us there," I said, "but they missed something." He picked up the key. "What's it open?" "Cabinet B," I said, "at Council Archives." He raised an eyebrow. "That locked room in Town Hall?" "Yeah," I said, heading to the closet. "And tomorrow, we're breaking in." By the time people started showing up, the living room smelled like ham sliders and bad perfume. Same couch from my childhood, just reupholstered to pretend things had changed. The house felt staged, like grief was being rehearsed, not lived in. Marcus was already holding court near the fireplace, sleeves rolled, drink in hand, fake sadness plastered across his face like makeup. Half the town was hanging on his every word. "He always said the trout were the heartbeat of this land," Marcus said, smiling like he'd written it himself. "He fought for those fish until the very end." I froze mid-step. "Trout?" My chest tightened. Dad never gave a damn about trout. He fought for river protections, yes. Water flow levels, yes. But trout? That was part of the damn code. If they bring up the trout hatchery, they've read the wrong files. I moved toward the wall and scanned the room. 3 men near the bookshelf didn't laugh at the story. They just nodded, like they'd gotten the message. He was signaling. I glanced at Evan, but he was deep in conversation with one of the neighbors. I made a slow pass toward the drinks table, eyes locked on Marcus. He stood relaxed, like he belonged there, like none of this touched him. Then she appeared beside him, a woman I didn't recognize. Late 30s, neat suit, hair too polished for this town. She handed him a manila folder, like it was no big deal. He didn't even try to hide it, tucked it under his arm and kept talking. I stepped closer, just enough to catch the edge of a page as he opened it. Land registry printouts. I knew the format. I'd filed the same ones myself for the service. I leaned in. Top line, property claims pending review. Ridgewater Wetlands Parcel 17B. My blood went cold. Marcus wasn't just signaling, he was making his move, using the wake as cover. Every fake smile, every half tear was a sales pitch. And the folder? That was the blueprint. I pulled back and walked straight to Evan, grabbed his elbow mid-sentence. "Sorry," I said to whoever he was talking to. "Need a word." We stepped into the hallway. I waited until we were out of sight before I spoke. "He's either stupid enough to parrot what he doesn't understand," I said, voice low, "or he knows exactly what he's doing." Evan glanced back toward the living room. "The trout thing?" "Yeah, Dad never used that word once in his life. That was the code. Marcus just dropped it like it meant nothing. You think he's testing the room?" "No," I said. "I think he's confirming who's in on it." Evan looked grim. "So who's the woman?" "I don't know yet," I said, but she brought him a file full of land claims. And I saw Ridgewater on the header. Protected wetlands? Until last year, yes. Now? Looks like Marcus is staking claims under the radar, probably with council signatures Dad didn't authorize. Evan leaned against the wall. "So what do we do? Out him in front of the whole crowd?" "Not yet," I said. "He's playing long." "We play longer." Behind us, someone clinked a glass for attention. Marcus again, toasting Franklin like he hadn't gutted his reputation with one smirk. I kept my back to him. "You said we were going to the archives tomorrow?" Evan asked. "First thing," I said. "That key better open something." He nodded slowly. "What if it doesn't?" I looked back toward the living room, where Marcus stood with that same smirk, surrounded by strangers in suits. "Then we tear the whole council apart until we find what he buried." Evan's voice had barely faded when Marcus raised his glass again. "You know what Franklin always said? Never trust a checkpoint with clean boots." My stomach turned. That phrase. Havana checkpoint. That wasn't something Dad ever said in public. It came from a field note, one he scribbled during a wildfire mission we were both assigned to back in 2011. I remember the exact page, yellow legal pad, margin full of curse words, and that line boxed in red ink. Never trust a checkpoint with clean boots. I backed up 2 steps into the shadow of the hallway and stared at Marcus. He was relaxed on the outside, maybe even smug. But now I was watching closely, and I saw it. His right hand. Just slightly. A tremor. Like a man bluffing with a losing hand and hoping no one noticed. He's nervous, I whispered. Evan leaned forward, following my gaze. He's bluffing? No, I said. He's performing. And just like that, my mind jumped to a video call from a few weeks before Dad died. Late at night, he hadn't wanted to talk on the phone, said it needed to be face to face. I fired up the old laptop, and when his image came on screen, the first thing I noticed was how still he was. Not scared. Still, like a ranger waiting for a coyote to pass. We talked, small stuff at first, his roof leaking, the neighbor's chickens getting loose again. But then, right in the middle of a sentence, he stopped and just stared. No blinking, no movement. 5 seconds. 10, 15. Old field signal. This isn't safe. They might be listening. Then he said, some files can't be deleted. They can only be buried. But buried things resurface. I nodded, pretending like I didn't get it. Marcus has been doing a lot of digging lately, he added, voice steady. If something happens to me, don't assume it was the storm. That pause, that look, that damn phrase. He wasn't talking about weather. Back in the living room, Marcus had shifted again. He was telling a new story now. Something about Dad hiking the northern boundary line during a government shutdown. Franklin hated red tape more than he hated poison oak, Marcus joked. The room laughed on cue, but not everyone. I scanned the crowd. A third of them didn't look local. Too stiff, eyes too alert, none of them touching their drinks. Two leaned together after Marcus finished his story. Not smiling, not sad, just watching. Too many suits, I muttered. They're not here for the funeral. Evan nodded. They're here for him. He's feeding them a performance. The Trout story, the checkpoint line. He's not honoring Franklin. He's passing messages to who? To the people who gave him access to the Echo Ridge files. That was the moment, right there. Not some dramatic showdown, just a quiet, bitter confirmation in my gut. Marcus had taken everything Franklin built and twisted it into a goddamn calling card. I turned to Evan. I'm making the call. You sure? He asked, already reaching for his coat pocket. Yeah, I said. He's not just dirty. He's trying to prove his value to whoever's watching. He stepped back. We do it from the car. We didn't say another word, just walked out through the side hallway while Marcus launched into another memory that didn't belong to him. Once we were inside the SUV, I reached under the passenger seat and pulled out the sat phone. Still wrapped in the same cloth I'd packed it in when we left Bend. Evan checked the mirror. Nobody followed us. I punched in the code, 7 digits, burned into my brain, and waited. 2 rings, then a voice. Report channel active. Daria Hanley, I said, former U.S. Forest Service, Wildland Division, badge Alpha 794. I'm invoking 17 Bravo silence. Then, repeat. 17 Bravo, I said again. Environmental corruption with national implications. Suspected misuse of dormant federal files linked to Project Echo Ridge. Tier 3 access breach. Location? 5 Pines, Oregon, Council jurisdiction. Involves Marcus Hanley. He has access to flagged land titles. He's referencing coded Echo Ridge phrases in public settings. Suspected audience includes unidentified observers. A pause. Then, confirmed. Backup in motion under call sign, Black Route. Estimated contact within 30 minutes. Do not interfere. Do not alert target. I ended the call and set the phone back down. Evan looked over. What now? Now we let the reception end, I said, eyes locked on the house. Let Marcus feel untouchable. Then we wait for Black Route to show up. We sat in the car, engine off, windows fogging just slightly, and I couldn't stop tapping my foot. 10 minutes had passed since the call. No lights, no movement, just silence and tension thick enough to cut with a key. That's when I remembered. The keys. Franklin had handed them to me during my last visit, 3 years back. We'd been standing in the barn, going over some old trail signage, and he slipped them into my hand without a word. Just a firm look. He never explained what they were for. I dug into my uniform pocket now, deeper than usual, past the stitching. Still there, 4 keys, all unmarked, except one, brass, thin, slightly worn on the edge like it had seen years of use. I looked at Evan. Stay out here. I need 10 minutes. He didn't ask why. He just nodded. I slipped back into the house, stepped past the kitchen without waking Mom, and into Franklin's office, the room nobody touched since the day he died. The air was stale with dust and old cedar. His desk sat like a vault in the corner, heavy and squared off, top drawer sealed tight with a lock I'd never been able to pick. I slid in the brass key. Click. Drawer slid open, but it was empty. Nothing inside but a chipped pencil and a cracked glasses case. I ran my hand along the bottom panel and tapped twice. Hollow. There it was. I slid my knife under the front edge and pried gently. The false panel popped loose. Inside, a yellow envelope thick as a brick, a black USB drive wrapped in a rubber band, and one folded sheet of paper, typed, but with 2 words handwritten in red pen. I opened it. Echo Ridge Collaborators, Clearance List. There were 30 names, agency tags, dates, roles, and near the bottom, Hanley, Marcus, Tier 3, flagged for monitoring since 2019. Next to it, Franklin's writing, Possible breach. Watch. Do not trust local counsel. Black root only. I stared at that line for a long second. Black root only. Franklin hadn't trusted anyone left in town, not even Mom, not even the counsel he'd built his whole career around. I plugged the drive into the old desktop under the desk. It hummed awake like a sleeping animal. No password, just files, maps, budget ledgers, email logs, land swaps tied to ghost LLCs, all targeting zones marked as contaminated under Echo Ridge records, now repurposed for low-impact development. Every single claim signed off with Franklin's forged signature. Marcus's name was buried in the approval routing chain like it belonged. I didn't have time to go through it all. I copied the folder to a fresh thumb drive I'd brought from Bend and uploaded the backup to my old cloud server, one I used during forest arson cases, still buried behind 6 layers of security and a kill code. Progress bar hit 100. Upload complete. I shut the drawer, locked it again, resealed the false panel, and took one last look around the office. Then I slipped the USB into my boot and walked back out to the car. They're not going to bury this, I said, sliding in beside Evan. Not this time. The second I shut the door, Evan turned toward me. You found something. I handed him the thumb drive. Backups. Franklin documented everything. Signatures, maps, payment chains. Marcus is knee-deep in it. He turned it over in his hand like it might bite. This is enough? It's enough to trigger a federal audit twice over. I reached under the seat and pulled out the sat phone again. My thumb hovered over the power button. You're really doing it? Evan asked. I've already done it once. This time, I'm giving them the nail to finish the coffin. The screen lit up. I scrolled through the secure menu, then entered my old service credentials. The signal was weak but stable. I hit connect. 2 rings. Satellite channel confirmed. Clearance level required, Daria Hanley, I said. Former Wildland Operations, ID Alpha 794. Reporting under code 17 Bravo. A short pause. Proceed. Environmental corruption with national implications. Suspected misuse of deactivated federal cleanup program. Echo Ridge. I've confirmed a Tier 3 breach linked to protected wetlands in Oregon. Name. Marcus Hanley. Councilman. Access obtained through forged conservation documentation and legacy file manipulation. Authorization source? I took a breath. Franklin Hanley. Deceased. Former conservation liaison. His signature was forged on transfer approvals. I have hard and digital copies, including clearance records and proof of early warnings logged internally. Target location? 5 Pines, Oregon. Current residence under local council jurisdiction. Active event in progress. Post-funeral reception. Possible coordination effort. Observers? Yes, unknown number. Posing as funeral attendees. Dressed formal, not participating, possibly gathering signals. Another pause. Then the voice shifted. This call is now elevated. Backup is en route under call sign, black route. Do not alert target. Do not engage. Observation protocol active. Understood. The line clicked and dropped. I set the phone down in my lap. Evan exhaled hard. Jesus. I looked over at the house. What now? Now we let the reception end, I said. Let Marcus feel untouchable. We didn't speak after that, just sat in the dark, watching through the windshield while the porch lights glowed and laughter leaked out the windows like nothing was wrong. 10 minutes later, the first SUV turned down the gravel drive. No headlights, no sirens. Just a slow, silent crawl like a shark in a shallow lake. Then another, and another. 4 total. Black, unmarked, matte finishes. Same model we used during fireline extractions. Government fleet, high torque, reinforced suspension. Doors opened in sync, no shouting, no panic, just movement. 3 agents moved toward the front door while 2 peeled off to the back. Another pair covered the perimeter. They didn't flash badges, they didn't knock. They entered like they already owned the place. I could see silhouettes moving through the windows, calm, methodical. A couple guests stepped back, startled. Marcus didn't. He raised his arms slowly, practiced, like he'd prepared for this possibility. They know exactly who he is, I muttered. One agent held out a warrant. Marcus didn't even reach for it. Inside, the woman from earlier, the one with the land claims file, slipped away through the side hall, but she didn't make it far. 2 agents intercepted her near the laundry room. Evan leaned forward, watching it all unfold. You think he knew this was coming? No, I said. He just thought he was above it. We sat in silence as Marcus was led out the front door, hands behind his back, no cuffs yet, just control. He didn't resist, but he looked around, scanning faces. Then he spotted us. Even in the dark, his eyes locked on mine. I didn't blink. Marcus didn't look surprised when the agents closed in. He didn't panic. He didn't ask questions. He just stared at them like they were an inconvenience. But I saw it. The twitch in his jaw, the slight hesitation in his step when they asked him to sit down and empty his pockets. Evan and I stayed in the car. I kept the window cracked just enough to hear the low murmur of command voices, clipped and precise. Inside the house, everything moved fast. No shouting, no chaos, just quiet removal. One agent stood by the fireplace. Another opened Marcus's laptop bag and pulled out a silver flash drive. Marcus reached for it. Hey, that's private. 2 agents stepped in. Step back, sir. But he lunged anyway. One hand darted out, tried to snatch it. The drive popped from the agent's grip and hit the floor. Marcus kicked toward it, fast. Didn't make it. Boot on his shoulder. 2 pairs of hands. Done. They cuffed him this time. Evan exhaled. That was stupid. He's running out of moves, I said. Cornered rats always get loud. As they brought him toward the front door, he glanced around again, playing cool. But when he saw our car, he stopped. Just for a second. Our eyes locked through the windshield. And for the first time, he looked small. Not furious, not smug. Just exposed. The door shut behind him. I opened mine. I'm going in, I told Evan. Stay here. Inside, the living room was mostly empty. Half the guests had filtered out. Others stood stunned, cups in hand, pretending they weren't watching a takedown happen in real time. My mom stood by the dining table, still, pale, hands gripping the edge like it might float away. She didn't say anything when I walked in, just looked at me, confused, like she was trying to do the math out loud and it kept coming out wrong. Why? She finally whispered. What's happening? He tried to destroy evidence, I said flat. He's been using Franklin's name to push illegal land claims. The Echo Ridge files. He sold access. She shook her head slowly, like she wanted to disagree but didn't know how. I stepped closer. He was your son, I said, but he was never my brother. Not the man he became. Her lips parted, but no words came out. He's been laundering conservation easements into development contracts since 2019. You don't want to believe it? Fine, but the agents in your kitchen aren't here for a misunderstanding. Her eyes welled, but the tears didn't fall. Why now? She asked, voice cracked. I looked at her, not with hate, just truth, because he thought he could rewrite history in front of strangers. She turned away from me. One hand covered her mouth, the other pressed to her chest like something hurt. I didn't wait for permission. I walked past her, back toward the door. Daria, she said as I reached the threshold. I paused. You should go. There wasn't anger in it, just something worn out, like the last ember of a lie finally going cold. I nodded. We are. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. The next morning, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a cold cup of coffee. Same robe, same blank stare. The air felt heavy, like the house itself didn't know what to do now that the show was over. I set my laptop down without asking. She didn't look up. "I need you to see something," I said. She didn't respond. I pressed play. The audio file wasn't long, just under 4 minutes, but every second carved into the silence like a chisel. Marcus, clear as day. 2 parcels cleared, Ridgewater and Cooper Bluff. Same key codes as the Trout survey files. We use the Echo Ridge access. That's the back door. Another voice. "And the payout?" Marcus again. "Transferred in crypto. Cold wallets only. We don't do this twice?" She didn't flinch at first, just stared at the table. But by the end of the clip, her mouth was tight, her hands folded so tight her knuckles turned white. Then came the crack. Just a small sound at first, and then a quiet sob. I thought I raised him better. I waited, let the silence settle. "You did," I said. "He made a different choice." She wiped her face fast, like she didn't want to give the moment oxygen. "I let him get away with too much. I ignored things I didn't want to believe. I closed the laptop. You weren't the only one." A knock hit the front door. Firm, familiar rhythm. When I opened it, I wasn't surprised. "George," I said. He hadn't aged much since the last time I saw him. Weathered, sure, but still upright, still sharp. Gray coat, dirt still clinging to his boots. "You picked a hell of a weekend to come back," he said. "Story of my life." He stepped inside, nodded at my mom, then handed me a heavy folder. "Your dad asked me to hold on to this. Said it was insurance in case things ever got too quiet around here." I opened it right there on the counter. Inside, maps, old ones, marked in colored pencil, survey records, notes from early Echo Ridge field operations, dated back to '87. A few bore Franklin's initials, a few had George's. "They knew back then," he said. "The program got hijacked early. Contracts tied to bribes, fake shell groups, council members on the payroll. Echo Ridge stopped being about cleanup the second developers realized they could use it to bury liabilities. I kept flipping. Soil reports, boundary shifts, all documented, all signed. This map," he said, pointing, "shows the original contamination zone. Your dad kept it updated by hand. And that?" He tapped the corner. "That's your brother's name. It wasn't added until 3 years ago. He always said Marcus was too smooth," I said. "Too polished to be clean." George gave a tight nod. "Your dad left the truth in plain sight. Just figured no one would want to look." I stared down at the files. It hit me then. This wasn't about just one man screwing over his hometown. This was rot, long-standing, well-fed, covered in handshakes and campaign speeches. Marcus hadn't started it. He was just the newest link in the chain. But maybe, finally, I could be the one who cut it. The courtroom was quiet. Federal building, neutral walls, that smell of paper and floor wax. Judge read the sentence like he'd already moved on to lunch. 28 months. Environmental fraud. Unauthorized access of restricted government files. Not treason, not conspiracy. Just a trimmed-down label for something older, uglier, and harder to prove. Too old, too messy, too familiar. Marcus stood there in a tailored gray suit, hands loose at his sides, as if he still thought charm might shave off time. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, he looked straight at me, didn't blink. "You were right," he said, voice low but clear. "He trusted you, because you didn't flinch, no apology, no denial, just that." The room stayed silent, no gasps, no drama, just the kind of silence that means it's over now. I walked out before the gavel fell. Didn't need to see him cuffed again, didn't want the image of him looking smaller than he ever let himself be. Outside, the air was cold and clean. No reporters, no camera crews, just me and Evan walking across the stone steps like it was any other morning. I didn't speak, I didn't need to. Weeks later, I stood in front of 30 young recruits at a ranger academy near Medford. Fresh boots, fresh faces. Still green enough to believe policy alone could stop corruption. One raised her hand near the end of the session. "If you had to do it all over again, would you?" I didn't even pause. "I didn't betray my family," I said. "I refused to betray my father's truth." No applause, just quiet. Outside, the wind picked up through the pine trees, steady and low. I took a breath, then walked into it.